So pleased to be joined by someone whose body of work in wrestling I have always held in high regard, one half of the TNA World Tag Team Champions and the most professional wrestler, Brian Myers. Brian, welcome to Under the Ring Pro Wrestling Conversations. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great, man. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you. So you're in the feature match of TNA's Under Siege TNA Plus show Friday night at the Washington Avenue Armory in Albany. The System, you, TNA World Champion Moose and Eddie Edwards versus Broken Matt Hardy and Speedball Mountain, Speedball Mike Bailey and Trent Seven. What can fans expect from that one?
Let's see. I think we're gonna have to beat the crap out of Matt Hardy, send him back to catering in Jacksonville. I don't know how Speedball and Trent got in this thing, but they can get their butts kicked too. We'll try not to curse on this one. And the system will reign supreme like we've been doing in TNA wrestling for several months now.
How do you characterize the System as a group and as a team? What's this run with that group been like for you?
It's been incredible. We're real life best friends, and now you're getting to see that on TV. The real deal. Me and Eddie are 20-year plus veterans. Moose is the world champion. There's a lot of knowledge, a lot of talent, a lot of people at the top of their game, all coming together as one and just winning. I liken the system to like the Dallas Cowboys in the NFL. There's bandwagon jumpers and people are obnoxious, don't like the obnoxiousness of the fans, but they win. It's that kind of thing. You love to hate us.
And you've been in a lot of tag teams in your career, from Major Brothers, Edgeheads, Hawkins and Riders, the original Dude Busters, the Gate Crashers, Tyler Rex, and I'm sure a few others I've probably forgotten. What makes a good tag team, and what's it like teaming with another guy with a similar tag team pedigree like an Eddie Edwards? Different places, though. And how do you two kind of complement one another?
It comes down to in-ring chemistry, right? You got to think like-minded, and work as one, and that's like legit. Talking out loud sometimes you can't say what you want to say, but you have to know instinctively what each other's thinking to get stuff done. So, and Eddie and I, man, we met 10 years ago when I came to TNA, and I actually got to wrestle him a ton when I was tagging with Trevor Lee. And that's where my appreciation for him started, man. I just thought the world of him and the Wolves. I thought they were an awesome tag team. And now to be, really good friends with him and tag with him, it's kind of like a dream come true for me. And it's just getting started, really. Like every match just gets better and better, and we start, we're really clicking.
And TNA is at a unique position in its history and kind of within where it lies within the pro wrestling industry too. What makes TNA a good fit for you at this portion of your career?
Yeah, I'm very happy to be in a TNA. It's been just like a perfect fit. When I got let go in the pandemic, I didn't know what was going on, and I didn't know where my career was going to go. And luckily, my wrestling dad, Tommy Dreamer, called me up and gave me a soft pitch on TNA, and I went, and it was one of the best decisions I ever made in my life and career. They've allowed me to be me, and that's the best version of me. The most professional wrestler. It's a lot more of a collaborative effort than just me doing what I'm told to do. And I think that's like how pro wrestling works at its best. And all the talent at TNA kind of works like that. And that's what makes it a special and unique place in the wrestling business.
Having watched you since Major Brothers, in my opinion, you were always somebody who always did something a little more to be noticed, and sometimes better maybe than you were being positioned at times. If you could kind of assess your own style and your own career, how would you? Because I don't know if you agree with my assessment.
Yeah, I would label that as unselfish, because what I've always been. I work for the best possible outcome, not always of myself, which maybe I should have, been more selfish in my career at times, but I always work for the best, for what my match is and the show in its whole. Whether that's like to my own, mistake, and I should have been a little more selfish in my career. I just always work for what's best for my place on the card and the match, and the show and in a whole. And I've always wanted to be like my hero Chris Candido, who I thought he could have a great match with a midget like Hornswoggle, or he could have a great match with Great Khali. It didn't matter like what you were, what style you were. He would adapt to you and make it great. And I've always tried to do that. No matter what. That's what I want to do. And like I said, maybe sometimes that hasn't got me in the best spot or the highest spots on the card, but that's just how I've always looked at the business.
And I think where you stood out for me most, kind of along those lines, we had Barry Horowitz on this show months back, and he's someone who actually did the losing streak gimmick twice in his career, once in Florida and then once in WWE. And just seeing so many people that you were able to elevate during that entire time period really impressed me. But also being in attendance at the match when the streak got broken was like, you made sure that actually meant something when it ended, and you were able to end it with winning a championship on an enormous stage in the biggest possible environment that you could be in. So like, that's not an easy thing to do for a wrestler, to be in that kind of a position, and to be, like you said, like you're selfless about it, but also helping other people at the same time. So
yeah, and that's something that I think, I take great pride in that losing streak, because I was selfless enough and smart enough to know that success can come from the losing. You know what I mean? Instead of being some anonymous guy who does random things in the show, I'm going to be, the losing streak guy that's going to become a character that people are going to become invested in. Just because I'm not winning wrestling matches doesn't mean people aren't going to not care about me. And I had the foresight to realize that, and the patience, which I didn't know I was going to lose 269 matches in a row, for sure. And I also never knew that it would end, winning the tag team titles at WrestleMania in my hometown with my best friend and my wife and kid in the front row. Like that was beyond all my expectations. But luckily I had the patience and foresight to roll with it, because I knew there was something there.
And you mentioned Dreamer before, as your wrestling dad. Are there any other mentors you have, or can you kind of expand upon his role kind of in your career now that you're meeting up with him again in TNA wrestling too? But were any other mentors, go-to guys you had for advice or feedback or anything like that?
Well, for sure, my original trainer is Mikey Whipwreck, ECW original and Triple Crown winner. And through Mikey, very early on, I believe when Matt and I were like 19, we worked with Tommy and tagged with him on an indie show when Tommy was the head of talent relations in the WWE. Established that relationship. Tommy eventually hired us, and just always kind of looked after us our whole career. Kept in touch. And the other one, the real obvious one, is Edge, Adam Copeland. I mean, that was real life played out on TV. Matt and I were just blithering Edge fans, and we had nothing going on. We're basically floundering. Pitched this idea to him on a whim, and he said okay when he really did not have to. And changed our careers forever. And and not just the fame we got from it or whatever, but I mean forever in the knowledge that we got from being with him every single night for a year, when he's the best wrestler in the world and the world champion. Unbelievable learning experience that I mean, one of a kind. Like, who gets to do that? It's still unbelievable to me.
What was that early Mikey Whipwreck NYWC training scene like? I'm a fellow Long Islander. I'm from Medford. So I feel like Long Island became a wrestling hotbed like right after I moved away from Long Island.
Yeah, I just I bet as old school as you can be in 2003 and 4. The business has changed. The way you get into it and learn. But he was pretty hard on us and big on the things. My takeaways from Mikey were always respect. He was like big about shaking everybody's hand, introducing yourself, that kind of stuff, or things that can get you in trouble in the business for sure. And the other thing that I always accredit him to is he was a stickler for like fundamentals. And what's important about that in wrestling is, because wrestling's so dangerous, to have good fundamentals and ring awareness can really keep you safe. And in my 20-year career now, I truly always thank Mikey, because I think the things that he instilled in me back then have stuck with me and kept me pretty friggin' safe, all things considered, that I've had a very, very active 20-year career. I mean, I'm not doing this once a month. I'm doing this a lot, and big time matches and dangerous things. And it's all in all, I'm in pretty great health.
And one of your big legacies in wrestling now is really Create a Pro Wrestling. What was kind of your mission in getting that going? What does its track record mean to you? I mean, you look at some of the people carrying the banner for that now in pretty big stages too, with MJF and Statlander and others. Just kind of talk about where the seed from that came from, and if you saw it kind of going the way that it did.
Yeah, so that one's a little more inorganic. I just really, to be honest, I was not being booked by WWE consistently, and I hated it. I had no place to train. I'd have a month where they didn't call me, and then they'd call me out of nowhere and say, you need it at Raw, or you need to do this tour. And I hated the infrequency of not being in the ring. And I was traveling to all these different schools, just trying to get some ring time. And then finally, my friend Pat Buck and I had this conversation. He had just opened a school in Jersey. He said, it's doing so well, I'd open another one in Long Island if you want to do it with me. I said, you know what? Sure. And I always wanted to open a wrestling school or be a wrestling coach, but that's something I thought I'd do when I was 50 years old, not, 28 or whatever I was. So just went for it. And another, blessing in disguise, one of the best things I've ever done in my entire life. We've built this culture and community of just people that friggin' love pro wrestling and work their asses off, and that's it. That's basically it. You know what I mean? Like you're a good person, you work hard, and you love wrestling. You're a great fit for Creative Pro, and we'll have you whether you're the worst athlete in the world or not. And we've produced some pretty exceptional, talents, and people have gone on to some pretty amazing things over the past 10 years.
And you look at it too, and correct me if I'm wrong, but in wrestling, it's like you're always learning. You're saying you were in WWE when you started this, so it's really about that culture of what kind of a training atmosphere you create for yourself, but also those connections that you're going to make during the way. I mean, like literally a connection you made when you got hired in WWE is where you are now. It's the same connection with Dreamer from early on, from 20 years ago or whatever.
Oh, absolutely. And then that's one of my kind of favorite things about wrestling is seeing somebody you haven't seen in forever, and it's like no time has passed. It's so true about wrestling, and I there's something about the camaraderie in wrestling that's another huge aspect of what I love about the business. That kind of just never goes away. The kinship of it, like it's a really cool special thing. That's truly one of my favorite parts.
Is there anybody, either currently in TNA or anybody you see kind of on the rising up now who you kind of like watching that isn't really getting noticed, that you feel like people should notice that is a little bit better than they are?
In particular with TNA, I mean, I was very impressed with Kevin Knight. We got to share the ring a couple times the past couple months. I think he's gonna be something special once he figures it out and gets a little more experience. I think VSK is someone to look out for. Rumors he'll be in Albany, and he's someone who had a run with TNA and AEW, and something just didn't click. But hopefully this time it's there. I'm a big fan of his. There's quite a few people. I had a lot of fun wrestling Trent Seven for the first time at the pay-per-view Rebellion. I enjoy the hidden gems of the TNA locker room. There's people like me that you've seen on TV before, and they're kind of reinventing themselves. But there's also these young and up and comers you've never heard of that are going to go on to some pretty great things. So that's a really fun aspect of TNA wrestling.
Yeah, nice platform for a lot of different people moving in a lot of different directions too.
I mean, if I could get more Creative Pro guys there, I would. I try all the time because I think it's a perfect footstep into pro wrestling and learning, live TV and how to work in front of cameras and doing promos and things like that. It's that next step above an indie show that you need to be a great performer.
And it's all about timing in pro wrestling all the time. What's going to work correctly for somebody, in a certain. Yeah. And that's true too. So you're also the co-host of the Major Wrestling Figure Poke podcast. What are your personal favorite wrestling figures, and what's one that you'd either want to see made or want to own yourself?
It's such a tough question. I mean, we have our own toy line like this right here is our Major Bendies. That's me as a similar to a Just Toy Bendums from the mid 90s. We have a massive line that we've made, from guys from Danhausen to Ric Flair. We've made everybody. We also make Big Rubber Guys, which is a love letter to the old school LJN figures that is just booming right now. We have, Dusty Rhodes up for pre-order and the Powers of Pain. It's going crazy. But for me as like a fan, what always brings me back to my childhood is WWF Hasbro guys. I have them lined in my office here, almost like wallpaper. And it just makes me feel like a little kid again when I see these things. It always brings me to like a nice, happy, sentimental place. So those will always be my wheelhouse of my childhood, my collecting. And I always say they're kind of like the gateway to me being a pro wrestling fan, because like it was simultaneous that I found these figures and I found what wrestling was when I was 5, and just everything changed for me.
Yeah, it's kind of its own thing, and everybody has their own time when they got into it too. Because when I was young, it was LJN, it was the big rubber guys, and getting all of those if you could. And I had close to all of them, but don't have any of them anymore.
Oh no!
But
Give
yeah,
them
but
back.
they were all used, and they were all out of box and everything like that. How many Kurt Hawkins or Brian Myers branded figures do you actually own?
Whew, I don't know. I have a whole shelf over there. I mean, I really don't know. There's a lot. There's a brand new Super 7 that's coming any day now. There's a Power Town 2-pack with Matt Cardona that I'm super excited about. That's dropping in September. It's like I love getting them. So, you know, it's like you get one and then I move on to what's the next one and I get real excited about that. So that's where my focus goes.
Anybody at this point in your career, you've wrestled so many people and had so many great opportunities, so many places. Is there anybody that you haven't wrestled that maybe you'd like to still?
I get asked that all the time, and I don't have a great answer for it. I've been so blessed. I've worked with all these, you know, legends and you know, people I adored growing up, and then, you know, become friends with certain people and I worked them. I mean, I'm really enjoying being part of the system right now, and I want to be present in that. You know, I don't want to look back and be like, man, look back and go, man, when we were in the system, that was really cool. I want to be present and realize that this is cool right now. So that's where my focus is at. You know, I'm tagging with my best friend and the guy that I think is one of the best wrestlers in the world, along with a world champion who's another one of my great friends, and Alisha, who's the coolest and a great friend too. You know, we got a really special thing going, and we're in a great place, and I want to be present in knowing that and being part of it, enjoying it while it's happening.
Very good. We're going to move on to something we call the 3 count now. It's going to be 3 quick questions and your answers. So Matt Cardona, before he got injured, worked one of his dream matches against, you know, a career mentor for both of you in Adam Copeland. I guess it's kind of following off my last question, but who would your dream match be against if you had the opportunity to pick one?
I think because I saw Matt do that, I didn't realize how much I wanted to do that, and that's something for sure I would love to do. Wrestle Adam Copeland in a singles match.
Very good. Second question, what was your personal favorite Kurt Hawkins Face the Facts fact?
None, because that wasn't my idea, and it was just
none of them were yours.
It was just thrust upon me because they had nothing, and it was pointless and went nowhere, and there was nothing emotional or sentimental or reality based about it. It was just complete.
That's too bad, because I feel like if you would have come up with them, you probably could have had some good ones.
What I always heard was some writer told Vince about Chuck Norris facts, which is also we're talking years from that being a popular thing.
That's
unfortunate. And Vince thought it was hilarious, and that's just where that went. And there was no plans. It was just basically pointless. Yeah,
it's disappointing.
Yeah, that's why I went nowhere.
Oh, all right. So my last question on the 3 count. So as I said, I'm also a Long Islander. The 2023 New York Mets. What are your early impressions of the season so far?
What a roller coaster ride it's been in just the month of April. I don't see much going on here. I see them being a 500 team, maybe a wild card team, which I'll take. And just like basically all I'm asking at this point is don't tank as bad as you did last year, where like I basically, you know, by 4th of July I wasn't even watching baseball. You know, let me enjoy baseball for a couple more months this year, please. That's what I'm asking.
I always enjoyed the different sort of like 7-line army looking gear that you had too as a Mets fan.
That was a fun time. That was before he signed the you know, we become friendly, and he eventually signed the MLB licensing deal, so that's where that went away.
Okay.
But yeah, he let me, you know, borrow the designs and do stuff. It had some really cool stuff back then.
Very good. So again, TNA Wrestling Under Siege, TNA Plus Friday night, Washington Avenue Armory in Albany. The System, Brian Myers, Moose, and Eddie Edwards with Alisha versus Broken Matt Hardy and Speedball Mountain, Speedball Mike Bailey and Trent Seven. Brian Myers, thank you so much for doing this today. I really appreciate it. I've always, you know, like I said, totally respected everything you've done in pro wrestling, and wish you all the best moving ahead.
Thanks, man. I appreciate that. And please tune in to Under Siege.
All right. Thank you. Welcome to Under the Ring Pro Wrestling Conversations. My name is Phil Strum. So glad you joined me today. My guest today is one half of the TNA World Tag Team Champions, a member of the System. It's the most professional wrestler, Brian Myers. You might know Brian Myers from also his run in WWE as Kurt Hawkins. He's been around the business for 20 years. He's the co-trainer at Creative Pro Wrestling, which has produced some of the top talent in the Northeast: MJF, Chris Statlander, Max Caster, Anthony Bowens, and so many others. I've just always really respected Brian Myers, and I was really excited to get this opportunity to interview him. So here we go right now with my interview with Brian Myers. Thanks again, everyone, for joining me today on Under the Ring Pro Wrestling Conversations. I'd like to thank Brian Myers. I'd also like to thank Ross Foreman from TNA Wrestling, their Under Siege show on TNA Plus Friday night at the Armory in Albany. Is available on TNA Plus, The System versus Broken Matt Hardy at Speedball Mountain. Follow me on Twitter at Under the Ring for all the latest guest announcements, and have a great week, everyone.